Okay, I'm here today with Marco Figueroa, who's Senior Manager Cybersecurity Risk and Compliance at the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Marco, welcome.
Thank you very much, Byron. It's a pleasure to meet you again and to be part of this fantastic ADAPT session.
Thank you, mate. It's wonderful to have you here. Now, you've been at the organisation for almost 3 years. Prior to that, you were Group CISO at the New South Wales Department of Customer Service. You were at Coca-Cola for 21 years as a cyber expert. That's one long innings in a cyber role in an organisation, isn't it? Why did you spend so much time there? You were obviously enjoying it.
Well, it's a transition from someone who is moving from technology into cyber, into this world that we're building. It's a fantastic opportunity, and certainly Coca-Cola Amatil was a perfect venue for that. When we started building automated warehouses and automated production facilities around the country and in Asia Pacific and around the whole of New Zealand.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity and a great organisation. Now, in your role at Australian Institute of Company Directors at the moment, what's the biggest cyber threat that you and your team face, and how is this reflected in the way that you approach improving your cyber posture, particularly given the big attacks that we've had in Australia over the past 12 months?
The biggest threat for any organisation, large, small, medium-sized, government, regardless of the line of business, is email, is the email threat.
Oh, for sure.
This is how typically ransomware is deployed. It only takes one person to click and open the doors of the kingdom. So I think this is not just for the Australian Institute of Company Directors, but this is a golden rule for all organisations. Email continues to be the number one threat vector across industry.
And it's oftentimes the people that you least expect get caught out when you're doing your testing as well, right?
Very much so, and I'll tell you why. Because these individuals put a lot of effort in the attacks. And typically they will launch their attack when we are preparing for a long weekend, Christmas, when people are off guard. Particularly when you are outside normal working hours. Perhaps you're traveling on a train, on a bus, etc., and you're trying to be responsive and check your emails, and you are off guard, and there you are. That's the perfect opportunity. Exactly right.
And it happens so often.
They happen so often. They are very opportunistic, and unless you have a mitigation that will be able to stop these events from happening, you will be caught. There is no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And we've seen so many examples of that. I want to talk a little bit about cyber talent across Australia and how this impacts our cyber posture. I had a discussion this morning with a gentleman from Internet 2.0 around this very issue. The Chief Executive of Internet 2.0, Robert Potter, his view is that we need a new way of understanding where our cyber talent actually is. And I quote, he said this: "We're terrible at technical sciences." What is your view about this? And secondly, are you having trouble finding cyber specialists across your organisation?
All right, let's start with the first part of the question, which is about the profile of the cyber engineer, the cyber analyst, or the cyber resource. Yes, there is a strong shift, not just from technical knowledge, but the shift has to go to areas that are totally unknown to someone who has coming from networking, for example. I'm talking about the way the attackers think, the way they do perpetrate things, the way they do launch their attacks. So this is beyond their capabilities. So the profile of the cyber resource has to be enhanced, has to be trained, and has to be relevant to the organization and to the observations that are happening in that context. So for me, it's a major transformation in the way we think, in the way we do things, and in the way we defend and respond to attacks.
Absolutely. So do you think that we have the right number of people that we need here in Australia at the moment?
There's a long way to go.
it's a long way to go. The answer is no. Cyber is 24/7. It's not a 9 to 5 job. It's around the clock, simply because we have enemies in many different geographies that when we go to sleep, they wake up and they are preparing the next attack.
Yeah, sure.
The other component is, as we heard this morning from the gentleman from Internet 2, there are nation states that sponsor this behavior. And people come to work to perpetrate these type of attacks because it's part of what they do, is how they are employed, and it's part of their expectations. So these things will not diminish. And the way to overcome this is by automation. And this is by building a zero trust platform that will be able to deter the attacks when they happen. I want to see every morning what were the attacks that were stopped, not the attack that opened the doors to the kingdom.
Sure. Do you use automation a lot at the Australian Institute of Company Directors? Is that you do?
We do, and you have to, because smaller organizations cannot afford larger budgets, and you need to protect the organization 24/7.
Absolutely. In what areas do you use it, and how do you strike a balance between what needs to be automated and what actually really needs human intervention?
Well, we start with the conversation around phishing, and we were talking about ransomware and the horrible things that come through emails. And this is the foundational block. You need to have an anti-ransomware and anti-phishing platform that will be able to stop the events before they come through. And if they come through, because these platforms are not 100% proof. These platforms will have a delta of 1% or 0.5%. Now, if you quantify how many emails do you receive in a day, that 0.5% can become a big number. So therefore, the objective here is to have a plan B. So the main control didn't work. There is a little delta that needs to be dealt with. And the way to do that is by having automation that recognizes that there is a delta that needs to be cleaned up.
Sure.
And that is how this platform has been orchestrated to facilitate automation end to end. So you come to the morning only to review what were the attempts, not breaches. Which is a different situation.
A different kettle of fish. Yeah, it's absolutely needed, no doubt about it. Now, over the years, as I mentioned earlier, you've been in a number of roles. You've probably had to deal with a number of attacks as well. What have you learned about how to best communicate what's happened to your internal teams when there's an attack, and the strategies that your organisation has employed to deal with the fallout?
Number one is we need to admit that we will have an attack. And by building from that foundational statement, you need to work out an incident response plan where you need to have roles and responsibilities. So we start with the very basics. You need to have an incident handler who will be able to call off the sessions, the review meetings, etc., from beginning to the end. And once the story is completed, convey that to senior management for reporting purposes.
And second to that, what have you learnt about how you communicate externally to the market? What are some of the key lessons there? Because obviously customers are wondering what's happened to their data, what's happened to the organisation that's being attacked, has their data been stolen? What have you learnt about that?
Number one is each company will have their own protocols, and each company will have to make sure that that open communication goes through those open protocols. So if I'm asked by the media what happened with X, Y, and Z, I will defer that communication to the appropriate protocols. Because this is where there's a lot of confusion, and rather than doing a good thing for the organization, you will be heading the other way. And we've seen this in the last year's attacks.
There was a Medibank. There was a lot of confusion.
That's right. There was a lot of confusion.
Having a field day now.
Cyber minister was saying one thing, CEO was saying a different thing, and there was confusion and uncertainty. which is what we need to mitigate and eliminate if possible.
Marco, it's been a great conversation. Thank you for joining me today, and enjoy the rest of Security Edge.
Thank you, Byron, and I certainly will.